if these both start at 25, then shouldn't it change as soon as I put a negative here?
No.
Now there's going to be, and I get how I said that may make you think that I'm trying to trick you, but I get a lot of people think that this is still 25 because they're like, aren't you taking -5 and timesing it by -5? In this case, the answer is 25. When I put a negative here, that makes this answer -25. And if you don't believe me, now honestly, I'm a math teacher and I got this wrong one time. I was like certain that it was actually regular 25 here. But you can try it on a calculator. You remember how you're going to be able to use a calculator in this class? So if you had a negative without the parenthesis, like this, the answer is negative. Okay, so you got to be careful when you say -5 squared. Do you mean this? Because that would be -25. Or do you mean this? Now, how do you say them different? If there's a parenthesis, did you know that you say the word the quantity? That's how you officially say this. The quantity -5 squared. Of course, you could just say parenthesis -5 parenthesis squared. But, so bottom line, parentheses obviously make a big difference. Do you get the parentheses change the order you do stuff in? If you have parentheses around something, it changes the order. So all of a sudden, you're going to do them in a different order. So today, it's about order of operations. So you've all heard of this PEMDAS thing. P-E-M-D-A-S. But a lot of you don't really know the rules for it. You know parentheses are first, exponents are second, but I think a lot of you get confused on the ones that are tied. Do you know which of these are tied? They're like worth exactly the same thing. Like you should do them at the same time.
M and D.
Yep, multiply and divide, and add and subtract. Those are tied. Now when things are tied, then there's a new rule that kicks in. If they're tied, it's the only time you go from left to right. I know a lot of people think you just do math from left to right. No. You actually go through and do the parentheses first, then the exponents. Only if they're tied, like multiply and divide are tied, or add and subtract are tied, only then do you go left to right. So if you have like 6 plus 3 squared, it's very simple. You do not go left to right. You can't do 6 plus 3. It won't work. Why? Because you got to do the parentheses, there aren't any, the exponents first. You get what I'm saying? So this has to be first, that's 9, and then you can do the plus. So do you get, one of the worst things that got into people's heads is that you just always go from left to right, because you don't. In fact, you almost never go from left to right. The only time you ever do is if you have the things that are tied, like for instance here, let me just finish this one. This would be 9 plus 6, and now I can go, well, left to right. I kind of read from left to right. There's only one thing to do, and it's the add. So the final answer on this one's 15. So when would you ever go left to right? 6 minus 3 plus 1. Why would I go from left to right here? I thought multiply was before divide and add was before subtract. I mean, it's PEMDAS for a reason, right? Really what it should be written is like this. Because multiply and divide are tied. And add and subtract are tied. So since I only have add and subtract, now I go left to right. And it's not just because I can do it in any order. Actually, you will get a different answer if you don't go left to right. All right, so sometimes you can go in any order you want when it's add and subtract. Sometimes it won't matter if you do the thing on the left or the thing on the right first, but other times it will matter. So you got to follow these rules. When do you go from left to right? When they're tied. All right, so in this case, 6 minus 3, I got to do this first, and that's going to be 3, and then I add 1, and it's 4. All right, these seem really easy, except as soon as I give you a difficult one, like literally half the class will get it wrong because they don't really carefully follow the rules. For a lot of things in life, you can be off a little bit and it doesn't really matter. It's no big deal. My dad, when he was in the military, he said that his job was fixing radios. And they wanted to make the point that you can't just be off a little bit. And so they had this radio fired up, and they have these big things in there that were like kind of round, kind of look like a big tube. And it's called capacitors. And capacitors store energy. And so to make it the point, the instructor said, okay, everybody come around here, let me show you something. So they all gathered around this thing, and he took a hot dog, and he was like, what are you doing with a hot dog? The hot dog has the same electrical resistance as your finger does. And he said, let me show you something. And he touched that capacitor with the power on, and it blew the hot dog into like a bunch of pieces, and it just splattered over everybody that's standing there. And he said, that would have been your finger. Your finger would just basically blow up if you touched that thing. Okay, so my point on this is sometimes it matters a lot, like you blow the whole thing up if you do it slightly wrong. You just touched the wrong thing, your finger's gonna blow up. So what was the solution to that? You had to actually work around it, because you might think, well, just turn the power off. Nope, capacitors hold power. Even after the power goes off, they hold the power in there. And so capacitors are why. If you ever notice, sometimes you turn something off, like, and the power's off, but the little light is still on, and you're like, why is that light still on? And then the light slowly like fades out. That was a capacitor. It was inside your electronic thing. Well, they had huge capacitors in these radios. So you can't even be off just a tiny bit. You do one little part wrong, it's going to be wrong. And does doing something wrong in math ever cause somebody to die? Yes. It happens all the time. Honestly, people doing math wrong causes people to die. It happens all the time in the United States in hospitals. Do you get somebody gets a decimal off on how much dosage they're supposed to give you for a medication? Look it up sometime. It's terrifying how many people die because the nurse, by accident, goofs up the medication amount and gives the person 10 times as much as they're supposed to because they're off by a decimal. Tons of people die every day. That's just one example. There's other examples too. Now, will anybody die if you screw up today? No, not if you screw up today. But there's moments when you got to be really careful. And my job is to teach you exactly what order to do these in. So let's just everybody write this one out. 6 minus 3 parentheses 2 minus parentheses 4 minus 1 parenthesis. Do you get there's only adds and subtracts, except wait, there's actually parentheses. So you got to be really careful. You do this just from left to right, it's going to be totally wrong. So you just do one. In fact, honestly, I'm a little lazy. I could say, do one thing and rewrite the whole problem, but it's like, it's such a pain to rewrite the whole problem. So I will say, do a couple things and then rewrite the problem. So most of you know that when you have parentheses like this, you go to the parentheses that are inside the parentheses and you start there. And so now we got 4 minus 1 is 3, and I'd just scribble it out and I'd put a 3. And then I'd probably just do at least one more thing. I probably wouldn't just like rewrite it here. So then I still have parentheses, and I can still finish what's in the parentheses. So I can do this now, 2 minus 3. And again, if you want to use the calculator, you can, but it's -1. That's not too hard. Now I would rewrite. If you try to do too much in your head, you're going to get it wrong. 6 minus 3 parenthesis -1 parenthesis. Now the parenthesis has been done. There's nothing to do in it. So can I just drop the parenthesis? No, because it's telling you that this is a times. So can I just finally go from left to right now? Nope, still can't. Why not? Because there's a times and there's a subtract, and times comes first. So now it's, careful, -3 times -1. Now if you can save some time by not having to type in the negatives on your calculator, because you know a negative times a negative makes a positive, you'll save some time. Really, do you need to do 3 times 1 on the calculator? I hope not. Okay, so that's just really 3. And now is it still minus? No, the negative canceled the other negative. Now it's plus. 6 plus the 3, grand total of 9. Now, could I have done that faster? Yeah, I'm trying to teach you, though, and I'm trying to show you where people make their mistakes. How many of you had 9, though, before I said 9? You had the 9. Awesome. Okay. All right, let's do one more. We don't have to do too many before you've kind of got the idea. And then we'll do the rest as homework. All right, so what if we have 9 minus 3 parenthesis 2 plus 4 parenthesis negative 1 minus 3 parenthesis. Still haven't gotten the exponents. We'll do that next. Write this one down. It takes a second to tap. It's all about figuring out what to do first, then what to do second, what to do third. All right, so first I hope you gravitated towards the parentheses, of course, and then the parentheses that are inside the parentheses. And then I hope you knew this one with just your head. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. If that was too much for you, you could have grabbed the calculator app on your iPad, but that's negative 4. But now what's next? Can I go back and do this 9 minus 3 now? Nope. Everybody wants to default to go back and go from left to right. Nope. We're still in the parentheses. So now your choices, I'll circle them, are either you could do this, or you could do this, and only one way is the right way. Should I do the stuff I circled in blue, or the stuff I circled in green? Should I do the add, or isn't that one a multiply? Because it's by parentheses. It is. So that's a multiply, so that has to be first. You can't do the 2 plus 4. So once again, it's not left to right. All right, so what is 4 times 4? 16, and it's negative, so it's negative 16. Now it's getting too messy. You need to rewrite. And then 4 times 4 is 16, and it was negative, like that. There. It's kind of like a relief. The problem's easier now than it was before. Okay, so now, have I finished my parentheses? No, I still got to keep going back to the parentheses. What is 2 minus 16? Say it if you know it. 14. Negative 14. You are correct. There. I just did this. And then I rewrote it. Now, this is a pain. I can do it, but I know a lot of you can't. And this is the part where I want to see what percentage of we have at having calculators by this point. Would you please raise your hand if you have a calculator with you today? All right, we're up to about half of the class. You need a calculator. Please write it down somewhere, right on the back of your hand. You're going to need a calculator. And I like, well, I got an iPad. You aren't going to even use that on the test. All right? And there'll be many days where I'm going to say, put away the iPads. And if you don't have a calculator, you're going to have to borrow one from the kid next to you. So start bringing your calculator with you. If I was buying one, I'd get a TI-84. Okay, so I can do this in my head. But if you can't, you probably should grab a calculator or use the iPad one for now. Just put it in your memory bank to get that calculator. I don't totally trust myself. I think it's 42. Can anybody verify 42? Okay. And there was 2 negatives, so that makes it positive 42. Can I finally do that plus? Well, yeah, it's the last thing left. That's easy. So 9 plus 42, that's like 52, except one less than that, so 51. Who had 51 before I said it? All right, good. Okay. That was, all that was parentheses and add and subtract, and even that was complicated. So what are we going to do next? We're going to add in some powers, parentheses with powers on them, all right? And that's pretty much it. We've done some multiply, we've done some add, subtract, so we really just need to get, well, actually 2 things. Fractions like a big fraction bar. And distributing and powers. That would be about, I need one more parenthesis. That would be about as bad as it would get. Like the hardest question like this on the test. One thing about fractions that a lot of people don't know is you have to do the top before the bottom. I know it seems like a strange rule, but it's kind of like the whole going from left to right, and the top of the fraction is tied with the bottom of the fraction, so then you gotta go from left to right. You know what I mean? If the top of the fraction and the bottom fraction are equally important, you go from left to right, and the top is what we read first, so it's kind of like doing the thing on the left. Okay, so we should really finish the top first. So we go into the top of the fraction, and within that we got parentheses, and we got parentheses inside parentheses. You're gonna start right there. 2 minus 1, if you can't do that, I think you're in the wrong class. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 squared, oh, that's 1 times 1, which is still 1. I did all of this, and it came out to 1. I'm going to go a little further because I don't want to rewrite this whole thing. It's just a pain in the butt to rewrite it. So I'm going to do one more thing. Can I finally do this 1 minus 3? No, you can't. Because this multiply here, remember this was in parentheses? That's a multiply by 1. So you really have to do this first. Now you can either think of it as minus 3 times 1 or negative 3 times 1. Either way, it's negative 3. Now it's time to rewrite. It's gotten so messy. Got to rewrite. 2 parentheses. 1 minus 3 parentheses over 4 2 minus 3. Now it's easy enough. You could probably do the whole rest of it in your head. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 2 times the negative 2. Remember, we do the top before we do the bottom. So 2 times negative 2, negative 4. And negative 4 over what? Well, I'm going to do the bottom now before I rewrite it all. It's 2 minus 3, negative 1. What's 4 times negative 1? Negative 4. Ooh, cool. And that's the same exact thing, so I get 1. Anybody have 1 before I said it? All right, good. Those are kind of a pain, aren't they? They're really picky. You gotta do it in the exact right order. There are things in math that are like that. Taxes are really picky. Like when you're doing your taxes, you'll all have to do taxes when you're older. You decide not to do your taxes, even like the movie stars sometimes decide not to do taxes for 3 years. And then you hear about how they get thrown in jail or have to pay huge fines because they didn't pay their taxes. You gotta go do this nasty math problem. There are people that you can hire to do that. All right. So I want to get to your worksheet. So you have a worksheet. It's in the Schoology thing for today. Would you everybody open up that worksheet? And we'll cut it down to a reasonable size. And then you're going to hopefully be good about asking me questions. You're like, I'm not sure which one I should do first. And you come up and ask me, and I will verify for you if you're doing it right. And this worksheet needs to be entered on Schoology when you're done with it. You can do it problem by problem if you want to. But I just finished the worksheet, and then I just type it in Schoology to get you credit for doing it. All right? So open up that worksheet. Don't notice the dramatic amount of time we have left. So we're not quite in work time yet because I'm going to do a couple problems with you, and then it'll be just work time. You'll be able to take cell phones out and stuff during that time. That's why I always say it's just so dumb to take your phone out early. Just wait a few minutes. It'll be work time. Okay. Would you please read me number 1? Don't be scared. I know it's, or how about this? How about if I just look over your shoulder to get number 1 up? Is that number 1? Okay, so it's got 1a, it's 5 times 8 minus 4 plus 10 times 13. If I taught you nothing else, don't just go from left to right. I know, sometimes you will do the thing on the left, but don't just do that. PEMDAS. Is there any parentheses? No. Is there any exponents? No. Then we go to multiplies and divides, and they're tied. But you don't touch any adds or subtracts. So if that's tied with that, then which one goes first? Left. So 5 times 8 is 40. So we do start with 40. I thought you said you don't go from left to right. Sometimes. Only in certain circumstances. All right. Can I just write the whole rest of the problem? I could, but I think it's faster to do this. You times 10 by anything, that's easy. 13 times 10, 130. That's easy. So I may as well just do those two. I got this part done, I got that part done, and then rewrite the problem. And from there, isn't it all tied? Pluses and minuses? Yeah, so I can just go from left to right. So 40 minus 4. I could do that, especially if I have a calculator, but 36 plus 130. I think that's 166. Anybody have 166 before I said it? All right, cool. All right. You're on track. Now, I'm going to say this is a short enough assignment that I don't need to cut this one down. Like, you will fall. I swear, if you don't finish this one in class, like, something's wrong. You'll be able to finish this in class. You walk out of here with no homework. Okay, so finish it up, type it into the Schoology quiz. I know, there's weird ones in there. And you'll have to, like, struggle and go, do I do the parentheses here, or is this first or that first? Please come up and ask me. I want to help you. Let's go to a little more complicated one. I'll help you with one more. Would you read me C? It's got a parentheses and then 9 minus 7. Like that. And then what?
Plus in parentheses 18 minus 9.
In parentheses again?
And then, yeah,
Okay.
And then it's to the power of 2.
Like that?
Yeah, and then another parentheses. It closes the...
Oh, it closes the parentheses. Got you. Thank you.
And then plus 5.
Awesome. Okay. So, you start with the what? Parentheses. Well, there's lots of parentheses, so you go to the parentheses inside the parentheses. There's 2 parentheses that are inside the parentheses. Well, then, if they're tied, you pick the one on the left. That one. So 9 minus 7 is 2. Okay, 2. Now, how come I'm going to drop that parenthesis? Because that parenthesis that was around that 2, it's not being multiplied by anything. If there's nothing happening to the parenthesis, if there's no like multiply there, there's no like 5 in front of it, then that 2 can just be a regular 2 that's not in parentheses anymore. Don't need those parentheses. This one is 9, and I can do 9 squared in my head. I hope you can. 9 squared is 81. All right, I've done so much. This was 9 squared, and I got 81. Now it's getting really messy, so I got to copy this down. 2 plus 81, it's all in parentheses, plus 5. If you don't stop and rewrite it, those are the kids that get it wrong. And honestly, some of the really smart kids, they were like, I can do this all in my head. But you get overconfident. If you don't stop and take a second and rewrite it at some point, you're really likely to screw it up. All right, so this is 83 plus the 5. I did my parentheses. My parentheses are all done now. And now it's 88, and I'm done. All right, that was the part C or D? That one I just did.
That was C.
That was C? Okay. Thank you. So I skipped over B. You got to do that one yourself. And then please finish this up. Come up and ask for help. You have reached work time. I know some of you were like, I really bombed that Schoology quiz yesterday. I understand. Some of you weren't here yesterday. I'm going to call you up during work time and I'll tell you what we did and show you how to do it. We really got to get that thing done. So that's one of my jobs during work time today is I help you to just get that finished. Some of you are finished and you know, oh, I only got like 9 right. It's okay, you just have to work on it. Let's work on that old stuff, that Algebra 1 stuff, we'll keep working on it for like several weeks. Eventually, they'll all be getting, last year, I got kids all up to like, the average was 17 out of 20. Some of you are already at 17 out of 20, I know who you are, nice job. Okay, work time, if you need help, please come up. And that's all I got for you for today.